You can tell a lot about a place by how it hides its pain. At Alder and Ash, everything looked perfect, until one man heard what no one else did, the sound of someone breaking in silence. It was one of those golden Friday nights in downtown Seattle when the world felt a little softer. Inside Alder and Ash, a warm light spilled across white linen tables. It wasn't loud, but it was lively. The sound of silverware tapping against porcelain, glasses clinking in subtle celebration, and soft jazz humming through hidden ceiling speakers. Everything about the place was designed to feel effortless, like comfort wrapped in elegance. Couples leaned in close across candlelit tables, friends laughed over wine flights, and solo diners scrolled through their phones between bites of truffle risotto. The waitstaff glided through the aisles with the grace of seasoned dancers, balancing martinis, duck confit, and tiramisu like it was second nature. It was the kind of night where no one noticed anything out of place because nothing looked out of place. That's when the door opened. There was no grand entrance, no VIP energy, just the faint chime of the door and a man walking in alone. He wore a dark hoodie and a well-worn baseball cap pulled just low enough to hide his eyes. Faded jeans, hands in his pockets, and a calm gait that didn't demand attention. He walked past the hostess stand without a word and headed straight for the bar. "Water to start?" the bartender offered with a polite smile. He nodded. "Perfect." His voice was soft, low, not shy, just deliberate. He glanced at the menu but didn't pick it up. Instead, his gaze moved quietly across the restaurant. It wasn't nosy, it was observational. The kind of look people give when they've spent time in kitchens, around servers, behind the scenes. He wasn't here just for the food. And then he heard it, faint, nearly swallowed by the music, the chatter, the hum of a busy dinner rush. But there it was, a sound that didn't belong. Someone was crying, not sobbing, not theatrical. A muffled, restrained sound. A cry you make when you're trying not to cry. The kind you bury in the sleeve of your shirt in a quiet room, praying no one hears. He turned his head ever so slightly, just enough to catch where it was coming from. Down a narrow hallway, past the restrooms, and near the staff entrance to the kitchen, was a break room. Its door was slightly ajar, light spilling out faintly into the corridor. Just beyond the gap, he could see a corner of the metal counter. And from that room, the soft, stifled crying continued. He stilled. This wasn't unfamiliar. He'd worked in restaurants before. He knew the toll: long hours, rude customers, aching feet, burnt fingers, fake smiles. He knew the stress that built up in the quiet parts of the shift, the exhaustion behind closed doors. But this wasn't just tired. It wasn't frustration. It sounded like fear. From his seat at the bar, he let his eyes roam, slowly, carefully. A young server darted from the back with flushed cheeks, adjusting his apron too quickly, like he'd been caught somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. Another waitress smiled robotically at a table of diners, but her eyes kept flicking to the hallway, like she was listening for something. And then there was the manager, mid-40s, navy shirt, sharp jawline, and a tighter-than-necessary smile. He stood near the kitchen pass, arms folded, scanning the room like a lifeguard watching for swimmers who misbehaved. But he wasn't protecting anyone. That much was clear. He looked like a man who enjoyed control. The man at the bar took a sip of water, but his focus never wavered. Something was off. You could scrub a place clean, polish the glasses, light every perfect candle. But if fear lived in the break room, the whole restaurant was infected. He shifted slightly on the bar stool and exhaled, as if trying to steady the discomfort rising in his chest. He'd come in quietly. No one knew his name, no one noticed when he arrived, but he wasn't going to stay quiet for long. And in that moment, he knew something wasn't right here. Sometimes, the smallest sounds reveal the biggest truths. If stories like this move you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Let's keep spreading kindness. Lucas stayed seated at the bar, but his mind wasn't on the cocktail list. His eyes moved across the room again, this time slower, more deliberate. The manager, Darren, still stood near the kitchen pass like a guard dog on alert. There was nothing relaxed about his stance. His arms stayed folded, and his eyes never rested for more than a few seconds on any one person. He wasn't watching the room. He was monitoring it, policing it. And now, with that soft sound of crying still lingering in the back of Lucas's memory, everything about Darren's presence felt calculated. Lucas stood up casually, making his way toward the server station near the back, where a young man was stacking plates with shaky hands. His name tag read, Omar. "Hey," Lucas said gently, picking up a clean napkin from the counter and folding it, more as an excuse to linger than anything else. "Busy night, huh?" Omar nodded without looking up. "Always is on Fridays." Lucas smiled, easy and warm. "You doing okay?" Omar's fingers fumbled slightly as he adjusted a stack of bread plates. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Just tired." Lucas paused, then leaned in just enough so only Omar could hear him. "I heard someone crying," he said quietly. "Back in the break room." That was the moment Omar froze. He didn't say anything, didn't meet Lucas's eyes, just pressed his lips together and looked down. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Lucas added, still soft-spoken. "I just want to make sure no one's hurting." Omar hesitated for a long moment. Then he sighed, more from defeat than relief. "She's been going through it," he finally muttered. "Elena, the girl in the break room." Lucas kept his voice steady. "She okay?" Omar gave a hollow chuckle. "Depends on what you mean by okay. She shows up, does her job, smiles at customers. But once the floor clears out and it's just her and him..." Omar stopped himself, looked around. Lucas waited. "He makes her stay late," Omar whispered. "Says it's part of the job, but we all see how she flinches when he's around." Lucas's jaw tensed. "Has anyone reported it?" Omar shook his head. "To who?" "He is the management, and most of us can't afford to lose this job." Lucas understood that too well. He nodded, gave Omar a quiet thanks, and stepped away. He didn't want to scare the kid more than he already had, but the pieces were coming together now. Elena wasn't just tired, she was scared. And Darren, he wasn't just strict, he was intentional. Lucas stepped outside under the awning, letting the crisp night air hit his face. The din of the restaurant softened behind him, replaced by the gentle hum of the city. Distant traffic, a bus pulling up, a siren far off. To anyone walking by, he probably looked like just another man checking his phone between dinner and dessert. But his mind was racing. He'd seen this before. Men like Darren, the ones who knew exactly how much power they held, especially over women who had rent due, bills piling up, and no family in town. He'd seen bosses who smiled for customers and cornered employees in back offices with their words, their tone, their suggestions. No bruises, no fingerprints, just a suffocating grip on someone's sense of safety. He hated it. The back door opened behind him, and a familiar voice cut through the cool air. "Thought I saw you slip out." Lucas turned. It was Maya, the bartender. She stepped outside, rubbing her arms against the breeze. Her apron was still on, a pen tucked behind her ear. "Needed a breather," he replied. She nodded. "Fridays will do that." Lucas hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Mind if I ask you something?" Maya raised a brow, cautious but curious. "Depends on the something." "Your manager," he said slowly. "Darren." Her body tensed immediately. Lucas didn't press, just waited. Maya looked around as if scanning the shadows, then sighed. "He's professional, mostly." Lucas raised an eyebrow. She chuckled bitterly. "That's what you say when you don't want to get dragged into anything. You're not dragging anything, just talking." Maya leaned against the wall beside him, her voice lower now. "He never touches her. Not that I've seen, but he doesn't have to." Lucas stayed silent. "He uses fear," she said finally. "Like a tool. Picks at insecurities. Makes you feel like you owe him. Like if he does you one small favor, lets you clock out early or skip a table, you'd better be grateful, especially Elena." Lucas swallowed. "Why her?" Maya shrugged. "She's quiet, keeps to herself, new to town. Has no one, far as I know. She works harder than anyone here, but that just makes her more of a target, like he sees her struggle and feeds off it." Lucas looked down at his shoes, then back toward the glowing windows of the restaurant. He came here tonight as a customer, someone who just wanted to observe the flow, test the food, feel the heartbeat of the place he'd built. But now he was a witness, and he wasn't going to walk away. Inside Alder and Ash, the dinner rush was finally beginning to wane. The once buzzing energy had simmered into a low, steady rhythm. Dessert plates now replaced entrees, coffee replaced cocktails. From the outside, the restaurant looked peaceful, content. But on the floor, Elena moved like a shadow, graceful, efficient, but detached. She smiled as she poured wine for a couple celebrating an anniversary, nodded politely at a guest requesting decaf. She took orders with steady hands and cleared dishes with practiced ease. But her eyes? They were hollow, not in a dramatic attention-seeking way, but in that quiet, empty sort of way that people don't notice unless they're really looking. She moved like someone trying to take up less space, like someone always bracing for the next invisible blow. Lucas saw it. And now that he had names, context, and fragments of truth, he couldn't unsee it. He waited until she stepped away from a table near the back corner and made her way to the server station to refill water glasses. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Elena?" he said gently. She looked up, startled, eyes darting briefly to where Darren was still standing near the kitchen, arms folded, scanning the floor like a security camera. "I'm not here to get you in trouble," Lucas said quickly. "I just noticed you looked like you were carrying something too heavy." Her fingers tightened around the pitcher, but she said nothing. Lucas leaned in just slightly, lowering his voice. "I think you're stronger than you believe," he said, "and I think someone's been making you feel small on purpose." That made her stop. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Her expression was torn between suspicion and exhaustion. Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If I say anything, I'm out. He made that clear." Lucas didn't argue. He didn't push. He just nodded, like he understood more than she realized. "Sometimes silence feels safer than speaking," he said softly. "But that doesn't mean it's right." She blinked, fighting back something rising in her throat. For a moment, he thought she might actually cry right there in the middle of the dining room. But she didn't. She took a breath, smoothed the edge of her apron, and walked away. Lucas watched as she returned to her tables, her face composed once again, her posture just upright enough to function. Meanwhile, Darren watched too. His eyes had narrowed. His stance had changed. He sensed something was off. Lucas pretended not to notice. He returned to his seat at the bar and took a slow sip of water. His mind was already spinning. This wasn't just a difficult manager with a bad attitude. This was someone who had created a system, a culture that rewarded silence and punished boundaries. And Elena, she wasn't his only victim, just the most vulnerable. Lucas waited for a shift change before quietly pulling Omar aside again, this time in the narrow hallway near the back kitchen where no customers could hear. "Did he ever do it to you?" Lucas asked. Omar looked down. "Not the same way," he said. "But yeah, when I started, he made me stay past midnight a few times. He said I needed to prove I was committed, took tips off my table, called it a learning fee." Lucas blinked. "He said that?" Omar nodded. "I didn't know what to do. I was new, broke, grateful to have the job." Lucas exhaled slowly. "Anyone else?" Omar hesitated, then said, "Most of us. Some more than others. Elena, though. He singles her out, keeps her after everyone else leaves, calls it training, but she always looks like she's going to throw up." Lucas clenched his jaw. His hands itched to act, but he needed more. He began speaking to employees one by one, discreetly. Maya confirmed what she'd hinted at earlier. Another line cook said Darren once refused to give Elena her schedule until she agreed to come in on her day off. Someone else mentioned that he rearranged shifts without notice, just to keep people on edge. This wasn't management, it was manipulation. Lucas reached into his pocket and turned on his phone's voice memo app. He kept it tucked inside his jacket pocket, microphone open as he spoke softly with Maya behind the bar. "I just don't get how he's gotten away with it for so long," Lucas murmured. "Because we're all afraid," Maya replied. "That's the point. He makes you think you're lucky to be here, lucky to have a job, and if you complain, he'll make sure it's your last shift." Lucas nodded slowly, the recorder quietly picking up every word. He didn't need every detail to build a case. He just needed enough, and he was getting there. He returned to the bar, tapping notes on his phone in silence. Names, patterns, dates. Every whisper mattered now. And still, Darren watched. The man had built an empire on fear inside a single restaurant. He didn't shout, he didn't raise hands, but he knew how to twist the screws just enough to make people stay silent, until now. Lucas looked back at the floor, where Elena stood alone near table 12. She was folding a napkin, her hands robotic. Across the room, Darren took a single step in her direction. She straightened up, her entire body stiffening before he even opened his mouth. Lucas's stomach turned. This wasn't just a toxic workplace. This was a predator with a name tag, and someone needed to stop him. It happened quickly, but not without intention. The dinner crowd had thinned, but not emptied. A few tables lingered, some couples enjoying a final glass of wine, a group of co-workers laughing over shared desserts. The restaurant had mellowed, but the tension on the floor had only deepened. Elena stood behind the host stand, checking the status of upcoming reservations on the screen. Her posture was straight, but her fingers trembled slightly over the keyboard. From across the floor, Lucas watched her carefully. He had waited for that right moment, not to catch her off guard, but to make sure she wouldn't be alone. Because this time, she needed to see what it looked like when someone stood up with her, not just for her. He approached quietly, his steps calm, deliberate. No raised voice, no tension in his shoulders, just the weight of everything he now knew, pressed into a moment that couldn't wait any longer. "Excuse me," he said, just loud enough for the couple standing nearby to hear. "Elena, could I speak with you for a moment?" She froze, turned slowly. Her eyes searched his face, recognizing him now, not just as a customer, but as someone who had been watching, listening. Her lips parted slightly, the beginning of a protest. "I'm with guests," she said quickly. I can't." The woman beside her raised a brow. "Is there a problem?" "No, ma'am," Elena answered instantly. "I'll just be a second." Lucas nodded toward a quieter corner by the hallway. She hesitated, then followed. They stood beside the wall, out of the immediate view of the tables, but not hidden. Elena's hands gripped the hem of her apron, knuckles white. "What is this?" she whispered, eyes darting around. "I know," Lucas said softly. "I know what's been happening. You don't have to say a word. I'm just here to tell you. It stops tonight." Elena blinked. Her chest rose and fell in short, shallow breaths. For a second, she looked like she might fall apart. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If he finds out..." "He already suspects something," Lucas said gently. "But he doesn't know the truth." And then he arrived. Darren's voice came from behind them, smooth as ever, but with an edge like broken glass. "Is there a problem here?" Lucas turned slowly to face him. Darren stood tall, his hands clasped in front of him like a school principal about to issue detention. He gave Elena a quick glance, then narrowed his eyes at Lucas. "She's working," he said calmly. "If you have a complaint, I'm happy to address it. Otherwise..." Lucas reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. No flourish, no grand gesture, just a simple movement followed by the slow flip of a black leather case, revealing a clean white card embossed with silver lettering. Lucas Garrett, executive owner, Alder and Ash, Hospitality Group. Elena gasped. Darren blinked once, twice, then laughed, short, nervous. I didn't realize..." "No," Lucas said, voice steady. "You didn't. And that's the problem, isn't it?" The room had shifted. Employees at the nearby drink station had gone still. A few customers were watching now, sensing something was happening. Something bigger than a mix-up on an order or a spilled cocktail. Lucas turned his head slightly, just enough for Elena to hear. "You're not alone anymore." Her breath caught. She looked like she might cry, but this time, it wasn't from fear. Darren straightened. "I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. If you'll allow me a moment in private, I'd be happy to..." "There won't be a private conversation," Lucas said sharply, pulling his phone from his jacket pocket. With a single tap, he opened his voice memo app and pressed play. The sound was unmistakable. Elena's voice, quiet and broken. "If I don't do what he says, I'm gone." Then Omar's, trembling but resolute. "You can't let him. He doesn't own you." The air went heavy. A busser near the bar dropped a spoon. Someone at a table turned completely in their chair. Darren went pale. "Sir, I assure you." "You used fear like currency," Lucas said quietly, "but that credit's run out." Darren's mouth opened, then closed. He turned slightly, as if to step away, but Lucas's voice stopped him cold. "You're fired," he said plainly. "Effective immediately." The restaurant went still. No outburst, no raised voices. Just a man standing up for what was right, in front of the people who had been silent for too long. Lucas raised the phone to his ear and dialed. "Yes, this is Lucas Garrett," he said into the receiver. "I need to initiate a termination and a formal HR review. Immediate effect. Yes. Employee name, Darren Holbrook." Darren stood frozen. No defense, no excuses. Just the sound of quiet unraveling everything he thought he controlled. Elena stood nearby, her hand covering her mouth. And for the first time in what must have been months, maybe longer, her shoulders relaxed. Relief washed over her in a way that looked almost foreign. Lucas ended the call and faced Darren once more. "Leave your keys with the host," he said. "You're not welcome back." Darren didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just turned and walked toward the exit, stiff and silent, his authority gone like a suit turned inside out. When the door shut behind him, the restaurant remained quiet. Lucas looked at the staff gathered nearby. Omar, Maya, a few kitchen workers peeking through the back. "Elena," he said softly, turning to her. She looked at him through watery eyes, lips trembling. "You're safe now." She nodded slowly, as if still trying to convince herself it was true. I didn't think anyone would believe me," she said. I thought this was just what people got away with." Lucas offered a small, warm smile. "Not anymore." In the silence that followed, someone clapped, then another and another. It wasn't loud, it wasn't orchestrated, but it was real. The staff, those who had been quiet for so long, stood a little taller now, looked at one another with something new behind their eyes: pride, dignity, possibility. Lucas glanced at Elena one last time before heading toward the back office. There were formalities to finish, reports to file, but something had already shifted in the room. For the first time in a long time, the air at Alder and Ash felt clean. Not just because the floor was spotless or the glasses were polished, but because the poison had been removed, the silence broken, the fear disarmed. The hush after Darren walked out lasted longer than anyone expected. It wasn't awkward. It was reverent, like the stillness after a storm, when people realize the worst is over but don't yet know what comes next. Lucas remained standing near the front, his shoulders relaxed but his mind alert. His job wasn't done, not even close. "Elena," he said again, turning toward her. "You're safe. And not just tonight." She nodded, slowly, still catching her breath. A few strands of hair had slipped loose from her bun, and she didn't bother to tuck them back. For once, she didn't feel the need to be polished. Lucas looked around the room. Several employees had come out from the kitchen. A dishwasher leaned against the wall, wide-eyed. A line cook stood with arms crossed, uncertain. Maya had come forward too, no longer hiding her concern behind the bar. Lucas cleared his throat, not to command the room, but to invite it. "I want to say something," he began, "to all of you." They turned toward him, a circle quietly forming. "This wasn't just about one bad manager," he said. "This was about something deeper, about how we, all of us, look away when things get uncomfortable. How silence becomes the easy path when we're afraid of rocking the boat." He let that sit for a moment. No one interrupted. Maya was the first to speak. Her voice was soft. "I didn't know what to say," she admitted. "There were times I wanted to step in, but I didn't want to lose my job." Omar followed, shifting from foot to foot. "I wanted to help her," he said, glancing at Elena. "But I was scared too, Darren. He had a way of making you feel replaceable." Elena took a slow breath. Her voice, when it came, was fragile but clear. "I thought maybe this was just how the world works, that people in power get to treat others like that and we just have to take it." Lucas looked at her, steady and kind. "It doesn't have to," he replied. "But change doesn't begin with policies or punishments. It starts here." He tapped his chest. "With truth." A few heads nodded. He took a step closer to the group. "I'm not just here to fire someone and walk away. This restaurant, this team deserves better. So starting now, Alder and Ash will undergo a full cultural audit. We're putting real systems in place, zero tolerance for coercion, manipulation, or intimidation. An anonymous feedback line, a clear escalation chain that bypasses immediate managers when needed." He let the words land. Then, softer, more personal, he turned back to Elena. "And if you could change one thing, just one, what would it be?" Elena looked around the room. At Maya, who had covered for her so many nights. At Omar, whose quiet loyalty had helped her hold on. At the kitchen staff who never asked questions, but sometimes offered silent, knowing glances when she came in early and left late. Her lips trembled slightly. "I'd make sure no one ever cries in that break room again," she said. "At least not because they feel powerless." The words hung in the air, and then from the back someone clapped. It was one of the line cooks, a quiet man named Devin, who'd worked there for 3 years and barely spoke outside of kitchen calls. But his hands came together once, then again. Soon, others joined. Not a standing ovation, just a quiet, genuine applause, a sound of release, of unity, of something being reset. Lucas didn't smile in victory. He smiled in relief. He nodded once to the group. "We build from here." There wasn't much more to say after that. Slowly, the staff returned to their closing duties, quietly finishing out checks, wiping down counters, emptying the ice wells. The energy was different now, not euphoric, but lighter, hopeful. At the end of the night, Lucas stepped outside into the cool air and leaned against the brick wall, letting himself finally exhale. He wasn't a man prone to sentimentality, but tonight had cracked something open. He hadn't planned to reveal himself. He hadn't planned to get involved. But not getting involved would have haunted him far longer than any inconvenience. The front door opened and Elena stepped out. She wasn't alone. Maya walked beside her, arm lightly touching Elena's in solidarity. Omar followed close behind, carrying his backpack and smiling sheepishly when he saw Lucas. They paused beside him. "You sticking around long?" Maya asked. Lucas chuckled. "Maybe a few more nights, see how things unfold." "You don't trust us?" Omar teased gently. "I do," Lucas replied. "Now more than ever." Elena looked up at him. Her eyes were tired, but for the first time all evening, they held something else, peace. "You didn't have to do any of this," she said. "But you did." Lucas gave a small nod. "You've all been fighting quietly for too long. Someone just needed to turn up the volume." They stood in silence for a beat, watching the streetlights flicker and a distant bus rumble past. And then, without fanfare, Elena said, "Good night, Mr. Garrett." He smiled. "Good night, Elena." She turned and walked down the sidewalk beside Maya and Omar, their steps in sync, their laughter small but real. Lucas watched until they disappeared into the night. He came in as a stranger, but he left as someone who helped them believe again. Sometimes, all it takes is one person to listen, one person to ask, "Are you okay?" And sometimes, one small act of courage can shatter a wall of silence built over years. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, be kind. Someone nearby might be quietly hoping you will.